Hi, everybody. Dr. Misty here. Thank you so much for joining in on Wellness Wednesday. Um, I am Dr. Kosciuszko, and I am a functional medicine practitioner. Each Wednesday, I do a wellness topic for developmental trauma survivors. Um, Today's video is going to be on narcissism, narcissistic abuse, and epigenetics. What does one have to do with the other? And what happens to a child's brain that becomes an adult later in life? Okay. So many of you who have grown up with developmental trauma or a stressful home typically have grown up in some sort of environment with some sort of narcissistic personality disorder, somebody with sociopathy, things like that. And that creates for a child a survival like environment. Okay, so it's important to understand that a normal developmental childhood, a child should go through different developmental stages. They should have their needs met, their basic needs met. They should have emotional secure attachment. They should have love. There's a hierarchy of needs that a child needs in order to have a secure attachment to be able to go on to develop a healthy sense of self and a healthy life. Okay, what happens when a child is growing up in an environment with somebody who has some sort of disorder? Okay, um, so what happens is a child end up, if you're not familiar with what narcissism is, or you're just in the beginning stage of your healing, narcissism is there is kind of a broad range of it. But typically on a personality disorder level, which is the higher pathology aspect of it, there's somebody who could have narcissistic traits, but on the scale, if they're closer to somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder, which can be very overt or covert, it really has to do with basically the thinking of the individual, and basically the needs of the personality disordered person becomes the sole the sole focus of that family. And so the family will be, the family's needs are catered to, including the child, that particular disordered parent. Now what that does to a child is basically the child's needs, child goes in survival. Child has either fight, flight, freeze, or fawn responses to trauma, and the child has a heightened stress response. Now, if you are also unfamiliar with the term epigenetics, this is also a term of our genes, our DNA coding. However, it's the expression of our genes. So we have one specific, we have our DNA coding, those we aren't able to change. We can alter, and science has proven this now, that we can alter our genetic expression. Okay, so whether or not those genetic codes turn on or off. One of the things that is particularly very important to expression of genes is environment. Okay, so environment, food, things like that, the things that we take in affects us down to our DNA and our epigenetics and our cellular coding. Okay, there is one specific gene in hold on, let me just make sure I'm saying it right. I read an awesome article on this particular genotype. I have other videos also showing which gene SNPs have been shown with people with PTSD also. Particularly, this is the NR3C1. Okay. So this is a genetic code that in children this is a code that codes for bonding to cortisol transmitters. Okay. Now, in children who are in abusive homes, particularly more of a personality disordered individual, such as narcissistic abuse, that child is going to have a higher expression of this code. okay? Because this child is going to be under more stress. The other thing is that this code will be methylated, okay? So it has an extra methyl group. This is going to be important because the child is not going to be able to normally express this gene. Okay, the code is going to be methylated and it's going to be highly difficult for the child to regulate the nervous system. This will amplify adrenal issues. This will amplify PTSD types of attacks. Really, really important to understand. So, if the person is in survival mode, say you're in a fight response or a flight, if somebody was in a fight response, they're going to be arguing back with the person more. If they're in a flight response, they're going to be wanting to flee the situation. If they're in a freeze response, they're going to be highly dissociative because they're not going to be able to understand why their parental figure is not meeting their needs, why they're basically like, somebody with a personality disorder is very, very confusing to be around. And if you're not familiar with narcissism or personality disorders, it's very, very important that this person later in life develops an environment of safety. And what often happens to children of parents of this is that they typically either some people will also become this way themselves. But other people will go on to either surround themselves with other types of people that are like this because that's what they are kind of coded for. Okay, and that's how their programming is built in. That's not to blame the person because abuse is always on the shoulders of the person who's being abusive, hands down. Okay, this is just to give an example of it's important to understand this background so that you, the trauma survivor, can be empowered to help yourself and know what's going on and what happened in your brain, as well as how you can help yourself now. Very, very important. So it's important to understand that our environment when you're young can create so many destructive things if you are in an environment of unsafety. If you are stuck in survival, if you didn't even get the basic of your needs met, right? You are going to have a lot of coping mechanisms and a lot of different genetic you know, disease genes being expressed because of that. Okay, so that is just one of the coding and the examples of how epigenetics happens and why so many kids with high ACE scores, which is adverse childhood experiences, end up the higher the ACE scores that you have, the higher that your chronic disease becomes. So many people end up with heart disease, hypertension, autoimmunity, depression, anxiety, PTSD, complex PTSD, more importantly, complex PTSD for developmental drivers because it's this consistent, almost like erasing of your reality by a parent. What a parent will do in these situations is kind of rewrite the script of what they experienced, the child has experienced. So um, they're not learning to trust themselves and trust their intuition. The parent could be either like blame shifting them or completely denying and gaslighting the child into believing something else. And so the child could be left questioning and in a dissociated state a lot, especially with emotional abuse, because emotional abuse is so it's so insidious. Like there's not any scars to prove that there was an abusive situation going on. And oftentimes as the person gets older, it's important that the survivor, one of the ways the survivor can help themselves is to try to surround themselves with people, especially in the beginning stages of healing, because safety is very, very, very important in the first stages of healing. Safety, beginning to self-trust, getting in an environment that is more calm, and you have a higher ability to, trust your own memories and body and intuition and things like that. That's very, very, very important. So oftentimes that is the biggest key. And what that will do that will start to reverse some of the genetic expression. You'll naturally see once you change environments, or you're in an abusive relationship of some sort, or abusive family members and such. Once you create a distance for yourself that you can begin to heal, what you will see is your natural physiology will start to actually heal itself, and these diseases genes will stop being expressed. Okay. And so I just wanted to, this is really big. A child who grows up in a developmental trauma situation, particularly an abusive situation, is usually wrapped in some sort of, um, you know, people with a lot of narcissistic tendencies, traits, and or personality disorders, or somebody who is sociopathic or psychopathic. That's more common than most people might know. And a lot of times it's really, really important, and I just want to emphasize this. If you are somebody who is listening and you have experienced this and you get it and you know what I'm saying, please honor yourself to who you are opening up to, so you don't open up to somebody who is going to secondarily gaslight you in the initial stages of healing. Because there are a lot of people that are unfamiliar with what abuse and emotional abuse looks like. And so it might just look like some sort of discord. There might be just like, oh, well, this person said this person said that. And like, you're having a miscommunication, which happens in relationships, right? You have a miscommunication, you kind of take a step back, take some space, look at how you might have reacted poorly, look at your own behaviors, the other person looks at their own behaviors. Once you're calm, you take some space, you communicate, and you talk about it and solve the problem, right? That's not a possibility when you're dealing with somebody with a personality disorder, because that person has just like an armor of protection on them that just kind of deflects outward. Okay. And so anything that tries to come forward with the truth will backfire. It's almost like it's not, there's no communication to a communication there. If it's narcissism. Okay. Sometimes with sociopathic or psychopathic, it can be, somebody who's like highly, highly skilled manipulator. And in those cases, patients, usually people with complex PTSD and like chronic stress, things like that, a lot of times, more often than not, the more common thing I see is somebody who has an emotional neglect piece, where they weren't like seen or heard, or they weren't properly helped to deal with their emotional states as a child. And so they have grown up with like a huge abandonment wound, and they're just kind of trying to function, and trying to get themselves feeling better from that. And kind of going off topic here, but I wanted to make sure that people understood what narcissism was and what it has to do with chronic trauma, as well as epigenetics in our health. Okay. Epigenetics, the core of epigenetics is, environment, psychology, and what we're putting in, on, and around our body, right, expresses our genes, our food, the people we're around. So it's really, really important to understand that if somebody who is an innocent victim for 18 plus years, they were bred into an emotionally abusive environment, they're going to have a significant amount of genetic expression that is going to have trouble dealing with all these physiological responses. Your physiology and your cells literally change. Your brain literally changes. It truly causes damage, and your body has to. Yay! My kids are ready for bed. I'm gonna wrap this up quick here. Okay, I'll be right up. All right. I'm going to go tend to my kids and not be that parent who emotionally neglects right now. But So really what I want to say is, honey, I'll be right up, okay? Um, really what I want to say is that if you are a developmental trauma survivor, there is hope. The best part about epigenetics is that if your genes can be turned on, they can also be turned off. Okay. You just have to work on changing environment as well as what you're putting in on and around your body. So, with that, I'm going to cut short tonight because it's my daughter's birthday and I need to go give her some extra attention because she's ready for bed. Um, so thank you so much for watching Wellness Wednesday. If that was helpful for you, if you have extra questions, please comment down below. I do a video every Wednesday. I'd love to hear more about what you guys would like to hear and what would be helpful for you. And also take care of yourselves, honor yourselves, and really, be true to your healing process. Okay. Physically and mentally. Okay. um, the other thing is that if you are somebody who is really struggling with their health, they can't get their PTSD under control, they can't get their health under control, their anxiety, depression, things like that, there are so many other things epigenetically and physiologically that do play into it other than the emotional aspect of the abuse and what body changes happen. Okay. Your immune system will plummet in that type of situation. So what I do is I actually work with patients virtually. You can contact me. I do free discovery calls also for patients who are interested in learning more about my services and how I can help them. You can go to drmisty.com or www.newhorizoncairo.com and book a virtual discovery call or a functional medicine consult. So I do health coaching with patients who have those types of backgrounds and help them kind of discover their root causes as well as move through their healing process to feel better. So again, I'm Dr. Misty Kosciuszko. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your patience with my daughter screaming. It's her 4th birthday today. And but I wanted to stay committed to my Wellness Wednesdays and be well. I hope the holiday season is going okay for you. I'm thinking of you all and I appreciate you. Have a great night.